Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Vanya Sharma, and we will be now starting the DEI VET training. First off, let's start off with the normal housekeeping of the Zoom reminder. Please have yourself muted and with your video turned off for the entirety of the session, unless we have breakout rooms, which I don't know, maybe we do, maybe we don't. But also throughout the session, you are also allowed to submit questions in the open Q&A in the chat box. And as you can tell, it's being recorded. All right, jumping into our wonderful speakers, starting off with Molly Houston DeSalvo. Molly is from, or has volunteered with the Junior League since 2013. She has worked at CP Unlimited, which is an agency providing services for people with developmental disabilities. And she lives in her current hometown of Brooklyn with her husband and 6 beta fish. Wowie, that's cool. Next is Molly Kelly Lopez. Oh, sorry, Mona Kelly Lopez. I can't read. Mona joined the New York Junior League in 2009 and currently serves as the Affiliation Council Head and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Board Work Group Co-Chair. When she's not at the league, you will find her at home in Brooklyn with her husband, 3 kids, a dog, and struggling houseplants. And finally, we have Jerry Powell. Jerry Powell is a director at large on the New York Junior League Board of Directors, where she serves as co-chair of the DEI Board Work Group and chair of the Communications Board Work Group as well. Now I'll be handing it off to the real deal.
Hi, ladies. Thank you for joining us tonight for the Cultural Competency VET. Today, we will take a deep dive into the Cultural Competency Guidelines of the New York Junior League. First, we'll have our introduction and VET announcements. Then we'll go through starter/icebreaker, breakout room discussions, Cultural Competency Guidelines presentations, questions, breakout room regroup, and return to some rooms, debrief, and a brief wrap up. In 2000, go ahead. No, you go ahead. Sorry.
Just a little, by way of introduction to the document we're going to focus on tonight, and the content that is the content. In 2021, we created a written guide to cultural competency. It addresses a wide scope of circumstances and outlines how to approach them with awareness, sensitivity, compassion, and context. So cultural competency defined. Cultural competency is the term used by the league to describe the specific set of skills needed by its volunteers to interact with the increasingly diverse New York City population in both an effective and respectful manner. These guidelines are designed to assist members in developing effective volunteer skills and understanding a variety of services.
Molly, are you there?
Yeah.
You gotta speak into the microphone. We're having a hard time hearing you.
Okay, let me turn the volume. Let's try the next slide and see.
Great.
Okay, let me try this one. The New York Junior League believes that we all bear the responsibility to learn about the world around us in order to be more effective in our desire to improve it. That we must understand the why behind something and give it meaningful thought. To not exemplify this responsibility, and one of our respect for individuals without acknowledging our biases and anxieties around race and other identities. These guidelines are intended to apply to interactions within the league also. Members should use the spirit and the intent of these guidelines to counsel thoughtful interactions with fellow members and staff. Although many of the guidelines will apply to both internal and external communications, some are even more relevant to internal interactions.
Molly, we're still losing you going in and out, okay? Yeah, we can't hear you at all. You're just moving your mouth now.
Okay, let's try this. The The
There
guide,
you are. We can hear you now.
okay.
Oh.
The guide is not meant to encompass everything you need to know about cultural competency, nor will it make you an expert on this complex topic. Rather, we encourage everyone to know members to commit to a process of lifelong learning about other cultures and individual experiences. Although it is impossible to know and understand the meaning and nuance in every culture in the world, we can modify our approach in subtle ways that can transform client relationships and produce more impactful results in our community. I'm going to now turn it over to Carrie to introduce some fellow concepts.
All right, thank you. Firstly, how is everyone? Can everyone just drop into the chat how they're feeling at the moment? Like from a scale to 1, from a 1 to a 5. I just want to do a temperature check. Is anybody there? Okay, cool. I'm on like a 3 just because I'm locked in my bathroom. This is like the only place. This is my otherwise known as a home office. Okay, so we again, I'm Jerry Powell. I'm a director at large at the New York Junior League and one of the co-chairs of the DEI board work group. And we wanted to do a little thought starter. We are going to go into breakout rooms for about 10 minutes into small groups. But before we go into the breakout rooms, what we're going to do is we're actually going to show you 3 film clips from popular movies. And each of these film clips is meant to sort of demonstrate a particular scenario that's relevant to our conversation on cultural competencies. So what we want you to do, we're going to run these 3 clips for you now. And we want you to pay attention to each clip, jot down, in your personal notes, what you sort of observe about these interactions. So for each clip, we want you to think about 2 things. Firstly, identify what kind of assumption is being made and on what basis. So are we in the realm of seeing an example of classism, racism, ageism, or something else? Are there multiple issues at play? And the second thing we want you to think about is how might the person at issue react differently or better in that situation? We're going to put you into breakout rooms after we run the clips. And so we want you to be thinking about this as you look at the clips. And then I'll give you a little bit more guidance before we actually go out into our breakout rooms. But I'll ask the team now to go ahead and run those clips.
Georgina, this is Chris. This is Rose's boyfriend. Hi.
Hello.
The garbage goes under the sink, and now for the pièce de résistance. The field of play. I love it. The nearest house is across the lake. It's total privacy. Get it? White family, black servants. It's a total cliche.
I wasn't gonna take you there.
Well, you didn't have to, believe me. No, we hired Georgina and Walter to help care for my parents. When they died, I couldn't bear to let them go. I mean, boy, I hate the way it looks.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
By the way, I would have voted for Obama for a 3rd term if I could. Best president in my lifetime, hands down.
I agree.
Yeah. Georgina.
Okay, clip
It's going to be a couple of interviews today, Ben. We want to make sure that we both find the right fit. Business as usual is not really our motto, so we hope you have some fun here. This is the first time we're hiring senior interns, so some of our intern questions may not exactly fit your profile, but we're gonna go for it anyway, okay?
Fire away.
Okay, good. Where'd you go to school?
I went to Northwestern.
Hey, my brother went to Northwestern.
Probably not at the same time.
Probably not. He graduated in 2009.
Class of 65.
Wow. What was your major? Do you remember?
And
And after Northwestern, you went on to...
I went to work for Dex One.
Okay, and they made...
Phone books. I was in charge of overseeing the printing of the physical phone book. I did that for over 20 years. And before that, I was a VP of Sales and Advertising.
So, do they still make phone books? I mean, doesn't everyone just Google numbers?
I believe they do, but before Google, that was how you got it.
Oh, no, yeah, I get it.
So 40 years at the phone book company, that is amazing, seriously. Okay, Benjamin, now I'm gonna ask you one of our more telling questions for all of our interns, so I want you to, this is the one to really think about, okay, and take your time. Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
When I'm 80.
Yeah, sure, yeah, whatever. Wait, did not realize you were 70. That question just doesn't work for you, does it? Should we just scratch that one and just move on?
It's your call, Justin.
Okay, that one's gone. You look great, by the way, so great. And you're clearly more than qualified for this job. You're actually way overqualified, and we were so impressed. You had great interviews, great video. You nailed it, Ben, congrats. You're an intern.
Hey,
Last clip coming up.
It's gonna be a couple of interviews. Business as usual is not...
Chris Gardner.
Chris Gardner. How are you? Good morning. Chris Gardner. Chris Gardner. Good to see you again. Chris Gardner, pleasure. I've been sitting out there for the last half hour trying to come up with a story that would explain my being here dressed like this. And I wanted to come up with a story that would demonstrate qualities that I'm sure you all admire here, like earnestness or diligence and team playing, something. And I couldn't think of anything. So the truth is, I was arrested for failure to pay parking tickets.
Parking tickets?
And I ran all the way here from the Polk station, the police station.
What were you doing before you were arrested?
I was painting my apartment.
Is it dry now?
I hope so.
Jay says you're pretty determined.
Oh, he's been waiting outside the front of the building with some 40-pound gizmo for over a month.
He said you're smart.
I like to think so.
And you want to learn this business?
Yes, sir, I want to learn this business.
Have you already started learning on your own?
Absolutely.
Jay.
Yes, sir.
How many times have you seen Chris?
No, I don't know. One too many, apparently.
Has he ever dressed like this?
No. No. Jacket and tie.
First in your class? In school? High school?
Yes, sir.
How many in the class?
12. It was a small town.
I'll say.
But I was also first in my radar class in the Navy, and that was a class of 20. Can I say something? I'm the type of person, you ask me a question and I don't know the answer, I'm gonna tell you that I don't know. But I bet you what, I know how to find the answer, and I will find the answer. Is that fair enough?
Chris, what would you say if a guy walked in for an interview without a shirt on? And I hired him. What would you say?
He must have had on some really nice pants.
Chris, I don't know how you did it dressed as a garbage man, but you really pulled it off in there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Twistle.
Hey, now you can call me Jay. All right, we'll talk to you soon.
So I'll let you know, Jay.
You'll let me know, Jay. What do you mean?
Yeah, I'll give you a call tomorrow sometime. And
What? What are you talking? You hounded me for this. You stood here.
Listen, there's no salary.
No.
I was not aware of that. My circumstances have changed some, and I need to be certain that I'll be able to
Okay. Tonight, I swear, I will fill your spot. I promise. You know what I'll look like? If you back out, you know what I'll look like to the partners?
Yes, an ass.
Yeah, an ass all the way. You are a piece of work. Tonight.
All right. How many of y'all were just watching the films in general? Not really. I sort of started to get caught up with what was happening. Okay, so we are going to go into breakout rooms. A reminder for our facilitators, we can keep things open. If people in your room want to talk about something that's a little bit different from the original prompt, that's okay. But we are going to ask everyone, we are going to ask for a representative from each group to report back to the full group. And I'm going to ask the VET, team VET, if we can have 12 minutes in this breakout session. Is that okay? Somebody from VET? Is 12 minutes okay?
All set.
You got it? All right, cool.
Yep.
Okay, so we are going to send you all into groups and we'll see you back here in 12 minutes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tina. I am the group facilitator. Nice to see you all. Please feel free to turn your video on and unmute.
Can I, excuse me, I'm Susanna. I'm actually recording the session, but I want to ask everybody if you're okay with that. Otherwise I can pause and I'm not recording the breakout room. Whatever the preference is.
Ladies, feel free to unmute yourself.
I'm fine with that if it's being recorded.
Okay.
Same.
Yeah, I don't have a preference. That's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi. So again, my name is Tina. We'll go ahead and get started. First, I'd like for everybody to just do a quick hello, say your name, and then we'll get started with the conversation. If that's okay.
Hi everybody, I'm Aaliyah. I've been part of the Junior League since 2016 and yeah, nice to meet you all.
Hi Aaliyah.
And I'm Deirdre. I've been part of the Junior League since 2016 too, I think. And I'm a member of the VET team. So I was trying to advance the slides earlier.
Thank you.
I'm Christine. I'm been a member of the Junior League for the past few years. I'm most recently was on specialty events, but I'm actually on leave of absence because I'm going to be moving out of New York in a few months. So my last semester. So.
Hi, Christine. And Star?
I was gonna say hi, this is Star. I don't know how long I've been, I don't know, 12 years, 10 years, something like that. I do whatever the math is, a long time, but in Indiana, and I'm on the Archives of Photography committee here in New York.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you guys.
Hi, I'm Hallie. I've been on, I'm trying to think of how many, I think this is my fifth year, and I'm on Golden Tree.
Hi. And Lindsay?
Hi, I'm Lindsay. Oh, I don't know if you can hear me or not.
We can.
Oh, okay. Let's see. I've been in the Junior League since 2019, and I'm on Passport to the World.
Nice to meet you. And I am Tina. I'm on the DEI work group and on the social equity committee. So nice to meet you all. Before we begin, would someone like to volunteer to present to the group our findings from our discussion? Anybody? Yes? Aaliyah? Christine? Lindsay? Star?
Not particularly, but if there's nobody else, then fine. But I won't be doing it after the other breakout room. So somebody else will have to do the second half.
Thank you. Thank you, Aaliyah. Okay, so we could go ahead and jump in with the conversation. I'm just here to facilitate. It's really about whatever you want to talk about. We could start with Get Out if y'all like. What'd y'all think of that clip? Did anybody see anything wrong with what happened there?
You remind me what the prompt was?
Sure. So in Get Out is a movie where the guy.
No, I know what the movie was. What's the question we're answering? I don't remember.
Oh, sorry. Did anyone? Sure. What issue did anyone see with regards to any kind of cultural competency with Get Out in the movie? So any type of racism, sexism, ageism, or anything that you might have seen that went wrong within that clip?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was displays of some microaggressions, such as saying something like, "Oh, I would have voted for Obama the third term if I could," saying things like that, as like the white male to the black male. I mean, I forget the characters' names, but saying that and trying to assume that somebody was also liked Obama just because he was black, and also feeling the need to point out the workers being black too, and kind of being like justify that to the I forget the character's name, but having to justify that too.
Yeah, I forgot his name too. Definitely some microaggressions there. Even especially like, with the, having to say, oh, this is why my servants are black, and thinking that he automatically had an issue with it. And especially, that, oh, you're black, I know you love Obama, So I definitely agree. Anybody see anything else in that film? Anything else stuck out to anybody? Not particularly? No? Well, anyway, you hit it pretty hard on the nail, so that was actually very good. So we'll move on. If anybody thinks of anything else within Get Out, we'll head back to that one. So the second one was on the intern. Did anybody see any issues, anything that was said wrong within that clip?
Well, I mean, he's applying for internships, and I think, while you're not supposed to discriminate against age, his age was brought up in every single interview, whether it be pseudo complimentary or just shocked or whatever. It's just as if that has the ability, like affected his ability to do whatever the role was that he applied for. So, I mean, it's age discrimination, ageism.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. What are some things, some examples that were in the film that really stuck out to y'all?
Do they still make phone books? Is that still a thing? Are phone books still a thing?
Yeah. Yeah. And then he was like, "Oh, you stayed there."
Yeah, or when he asked him, "Do you remember?" It was like very, I don't know which part, but someone at some point asked like a question, and then they said, "Oh, do you even remember?" It wasn't that exact verbiage, but it was very clearly implying, "Oh, you probably have dementia and all that," So that's what I noticed. Yeah.
I think it was, what college did he? Do you remember? Was it what college you went to? Was that
what major? What major?
What major? Okay.
Yeah.
As if you wouldn't remember that.
I
Or
think
maybe, I don't know. Maybe you forget things. I don't know.
Also, like when he was hired as the intern and they point out that he's overqualified for it, but he's still given like an intern position. Just kind of, I don't know. I think that also plays in a factor as kind of, they don't see him as being a part of like the actual, not that interns aren't part of an actual workforce, but being part of the staff But yeah, acknowledging that he's overqualified.
Yeah. And something that stuck out to me was also like, oh, you stayed with the phone book company for 40 years? Like, wow, how could you stay at one place for 40 years, you know? And that speaks to, you know, I think a lot of times people don't think, oh, you could stay at a job for a long time. That's kind of an old-fashioned way of thinking.
Another one at the beginning when she was like, we want to make sure that it's a good fit on both sides, which I know is true that, you know, companies obviously want to make sure that they would, and the employees would like them too. But I think making sure that the person's aware so that if they're not hired, they can kind of put the blame on the interviewee, you know, kind of like, oh, I don't know if it'd be a good fit for you, like if you're fitting into the culture, rather than kind of owning up to something.
Yeah, completely agree. There was a lot. Like, wait, who said that in the beginning? There was a lot. Every place that he went, right? Every person that he talked to, there was some type of ageism. So definitely. So we have about 2 minutes left. So I'm gonna go to the next film, which was The Pursuit of Happiness. Did anyone notice any issues brought up in that film?
You know, Will Smith showed up to an interview not dressed like what they would typically expect someone to be dressed like at an interview. And so there was a lot of comments about his appearance, which doesn't have anything to do with, again, his ability to do the job or the role. And so most of it was like, judge a book by its cover.
Right.
Yeah, and I think also how he rejected the offer because there was no salary, right? It didn't work for him. And it seemed like the way they were implying like he can't reject, you know, you're not in a position like, you know, I don't know what's the best verbiage, but it was kind of like, you know, like we are doing you a favor, right? We're giving you this job.
Like, how dare you turn this down?
I'm gonna look bad now, and like, who cares if it's not paid? You know, you don't even have the right to reject. It's kind of seemed like.
And also with the parking tickets, kind of like laughing, like, how could you not pay a parking ticket?
I think too, they were very, not only verbally rude and inappropriate, but also their facial expressions were incredibly just very dismissive.
Yeah.
They wouldn't look at him. They wouldn't look at him when shaking his hand.
Yeah, and some of them didn't even want to shake his hand. They almost kind of, you know, were cringing.
Recoiled. Yeah. What are we presenting? What am I presenting to the larger group? I don't really understand.
So we don't know exactly which clip they're going to ask you to speak to, but they're going to ask you to speak to one of the clips as to what our team thought about it, what our breakout room thought about it.
Okay.
So y'all were awesome. Y'all hit all the points, by the way. So there was no right or wrong, but thanks everybody. It was nice to meet you. I think Christina's gone, but have fun at your new destination.
Thank you.
Bye, ladies.
Bye.
I think we had a lot of really good discussion points about the three clips, the diversity of the clips in terms of the genre that was presented, yet still managed to present all of these, you know, issues just through the lens of their own, you know, whether it was comedy or drama or horror.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Well, I want to give a special shout out to Molly because she did like a lot of legwork to locate these clips. Yay.
Jerry, we didn't have a facilitator in our breakout room.
You did not.
I ended up, yeah, I had to wing it. Okay. So we had, you know, several ladies that were there that.
Gina, you're the best at winging that things.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that's also a
No,
special treat
well,
for your particular group.
well, I think I had Molly and I had also Margaret to, kind of, walk me through it. Okay.
Okay, well, excellent. Well, we're going to do a very quick report out from all the groups before we then move on to the next phase of the presentation. So what I wanted to do is go through, we had 6 groups, wanted to go through each of the groups and just for each group, just comment on one clip that you'd like to comment on behalf of your group, and just an insight that was raised in your room, or just something that you want to share that you want to put on the table for the rest of the group. And I'll just go around in order. So we'll start with group number 1. Do we have a spokesperson for group number 1?
How will we know our group numbers?
Great question. I myself did not know what group I was in. I can also just popcorn it because I actually don't know. I didn't set up the groups. I'm going to need assistance from one of our fearless VET leaders.
I'll volunteer my group to start first, just to save time.
Okay, great. Group 1 was Gina's group. Awesome. That's a start. We'll have Team VET will help me out. Okay, group 1 is Gina's group. But Gina, you were a facilitator. So you want to be the report out? Okay.
So Mark. Okay.
Gina, you're breaking up just a little bit.
Yeah, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna yield to actually probably Molly or Margaret.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You're gonna
Can
yield
you hear
to
me?
Molly. Yep, I hear you.
Molly or either Margaret. Okay.
Okay. Well, Margaret, why don't we give you the floor? Margaret, are you there?
Yeah, hi.
All right, jump in.
So we're supposed to talk about one of the clips here.
Talk about what you talked about when you first started off in our group.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, all 3 of them, but I was saying that like the full movies really kind of were almost centered around either racism or ageism or classism. And so kind of like while watching the clips, you almost like before, like when you saw the title of the movie, you almost already knew what the topic was if you had seen it before, because it was kind of like that was almost the point of the movie, was to like dig in. So that's kind of what we chatted about, and where that's come from, like when when those movies were created, and in the last couple of years, how far just kind of, I'm kind of going off on a tangent now, but like kind of how open the conversation is to, almost before it was almost like taboo to talk about any of these topics. And now it's like the more we educate and talk and are more open about it, the more growth we can have and learn from one another. And like by kind of shutting off and thinking like this isn't appropriate to talk about, it actually almost kind of keeps that going because we're not learning from one another. So
thank you. What a great comment. I love that comment.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you.
And just kind of like the removing the taboo as we get more into a space of being able to talk about this. This is really great comment. Okay, so room 2 is actually my room. So Laura, do you want to comment on the conversation in group 2?
Sure. So the clip that we decided to focus on was actually the second clip, which focused more on ageism, especially like in the hiring practices. But like an interesting point that one of the people in our room talked about was actually how it really also was making assumptions about class and political class, for that matter. Again, like it's all about, being able to actually interact with the person in front of you, not going off of a script necessarily, but seeing that, again, everyone's different and being able to actually wing it with the person and acknowledge who it is that is in front of you. So having that mutual respect for whoever you're with versus, going off of a script. But we felt like that difference of ageism, obviously, but obviously the microaggressions and the class and the political class specifically of that clip was very powerful.
Thank you. And I can tell you that the discussion in our room was quite robust and very interesting. So thank you for that report out. Tanya, you are group 3 as it happens.
Hi, I'm going to turn it over to Astrid. She's going to be our reporter.
Great.
Hello. All right. So we talked about all of them, but we focused the most on Get Out.
I think we talked a lot about, you know, people just making assumptions about other people on both sides. The protagonist making assumptions on his girlfriend's family, and sort of his girlfriend's dad making assumptions about the protagonist, like who he voted for, what he's thinking, things like that. So that was sort of a point of discussion, sort of how could that have gone better? Some things that we discussed was like, you know, just getting to know each other, and, you know, for example, getting to know the dad is talking a lot about the help that he's hired, like just talking to them as if they're people rather than just talking about them when they're out of the room, and just making assumptions about what they're doing and who they are. As well as the dad just getting to know his daughter's boyfriend as a person, and not just like making assumptions about what he's thinking or who he is as a person. So that was a big point of discussion, as well as that sort of bled into the other movies, you know, making assumptions about older people and things like that. So yeah, that's what we discussed.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So room 4 was actually Ruth's group. Ruth, would you like to hand it over to a spokesperson, or do you want to?
I would. Emma has been gracious to be our spokesperson.
Hi, so we, sorry, we also focused on Get Out and had some similar comments to the last group. I think the other thing that we talked about was that in each of the clips, kind of like the antagonist character was coming to the conversation only thinking about their own context and considerations, and like what they need to accomplish in whatever immediate task was at hand, and just really not thinking about how what they were saying was coming across to anyone else, or if they were like trying to moderate it as they were speaking out loud and just not being thoughtful. So but the last team said it pretty well, so
excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Room 5 was Helene's group. Helene, would you like to hand it over to your group spokesperson?
Yes, Vanya.
Yes.
Oh, there she is.
Yeah. So our group actually covered all 3 movies pretty well. We talked about them pretty in depth about the variety of classism, racism, ageism that seem to be pervasive. And because we talked so much about these 3 collectively, if somebody in the group did bring up this really interesting point that no matter the genre of the movie, we had a horror movie, we had a comedy movie. I'm assuming the second one was a comedy, and the third one was a drama. That's how pervasive all of these challenges are, the ageism, classism, all of these issues, that it has superseded just like a particular genre. It's incredibly pervasive. And so yeah, that's what we talked about.
Yeah, there's like a universality to it that is you know, very interesting. Thank you. Okay, the last room is Tina's room. Tina, do you want to hand it over to your group's spokesperson?
Yes. Yeah, I think I'm going to take that one. Hi, Aaliyah. So we also all talked about all 3 clips. And I think I'm going to focus on the third one because we ended with that and actually started getting a little deeper into what was happening in that clip. It represents a man going into an interview and not dressed typically as typical of what these people, his interviewers, were looking for, and they immediately judged him on that. Even walking into the room, they almost recoiled when he went to shake their hands. And the whole clip was him selling himself to a whole panel of people, which is not really your typical, like how someone would typically get interviewed. It just sort of seemed like he was set up to fail from the beginning because of the way, all of the everything was stacked against him, and he had to sort of like climb this ladder and really convince and almost beg to be given a chance. There was no point in that where it was like focused on the job he would do or the task at hand. It was all focused on, why should I hire you if you look like this? And then at the end that he should be really grateful that he was given a chance, and like, how dare he even consider not taking that offer. So I thought, when you take a look at it, it's just kind of crazy, because that's not really, I don't think most of the time you'd walk into an interview with like all the heads of these people in a big glass room and 10 people on one side and you trying to sell yourself So it was set up so that he wouldn't make it.
That's another VET. We may have to take that to another VET.
Can I ask, Jerry, can I ask the question?
Please.
Or are we gonna wait and come back?
No. Why not? Oh, yeah. Ask it
Okay,
now.
is it Aaliyah? Aaliyah?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So what you heard, I mean, you saw the way that he was dressed. So did it come to you that he wasn't appropriate? Or can you just help me with that one? I'm struggling.
Sure. I think that when he walked through, you could tell he felt underdressed or not, that he didn't fit this mold that he was walking through the room. Everybody was in their like crisp suit. I think it's just a commentary on like, you're judging a book by its cover and not by nothing about that clip asked a question of like, can you do the job? It was all about, you look like this, why should I hire you?
That's right. Very good. That's what I was getting to, that I was trying to make sure that I understood that they judged the book by its cover. And the guy essentially said that, listen, I can do the job. Okay, no matter that I don't look the way that you look, I can do the job. Very good. I like that. Very good.
And I think the through line to all, so we've heard it. Thank you, Leah, so much. And I think, and Gina, for your question, for your clarifying question, I think the through line here that came up in each and every group was at core, it's about seeing people. And it's about seeing people and the humanity of it, and really listening, caring, and being present is sort of what's like underlying all of these isms. And so we're gonna thank you all very much for your willingness to engage in the exercise. It's a little bit about having fun and also just sort of like getting us thinking about these themes in a different way. And now we're gonna actually dive into the actual guidelines themselves and give you a high-level overview of the guidelines themselves. And this is a reminder that this is actually meant to just give you a little bit of a flavor for the guidelines, but the guidelines themselves are to be consulted. We really want to encourage you to take the time to read them on your own time. We'll actually drop a link to the chat that takes you right to it. But we wanted to just help you, get you familiarized with the guidelines. And so I'm going to hand it back over to Molly. And Molly, I'm going to let you know if we have audio issues. If we have audio issues, we might have to kick it back to Mona to read the slides, because it was very hard to hear you.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that too. If it's really rough, just put it in the chat and I'll expect Mona to jump in.
Yeah, I think we're going to have Mona. Do you think maybe you could jump in on this piece?
Of course.
I think the audio issues are going to be too tough.
Of course. So as Jerry mentioned, we're going through the highlights of the Cultural Competency Guidelines. Although reviewing the entire document as a group would require more time than one VET, we'd like to spotlight each category of the guidelines for the presentation portion of the evening. First, we'll take you through some key terms and a discussion surrounding cultural competency, then examine the categories of different populations and circumstances. For the list of useful names, terms outlined in the full guidelines, we've highlighted a few key terms to think about during this evening's discussions. Our first one is ally. An ally is an individual who speaks out and stands up for a person or group that is targeted and discriminated against. The next phrase is cultural humility. Related to cultural competency, cultural humility is a lifelong process of self-reflection and self-critique whereby an individual not only learns about another's culture, but starts with an examination of his own beliefs and cultural identities. This term was coined by healthcare professionals in 1998 and is sometimes used interchangeably with cultural competency. Key aspects of cultural humility include approaching one's interactions with a humble and respectful attitude, realizing that we cannot possibly know everything about another's culture, acknowledging and challenging our own biases, and committing to an other-centered process of lifelong learning. Diversity. Diversity involves creating an environment where all people can raise their perspectives authentically and have their voices matter and impact decisions. It has come to refer to the various backgrounds and races that comprise a community, nation, or other grouping. In many cases, the term does not just acknowledge the existence of variety in background, race, gender, religion, sexual orientation, and so on, but also implies an appreciation of these differences. Equity, an approach that ensures everyone's access to the same opportunities. Equity recognizes that advantages and barriers exist, and that as a result, we do not all start from the same place. Equity is a process that begins by acknowledging that unequal starting place and continues to correct and address the imbalance. Implicit bias, attitudes, stereotypes, and past experiences that affect our understanding, actions, and decisions in an unconscious manner. Privilege. Privilege refers to the often unquestioned and unearned set of advantages, entitlements, benefits, and choices bestowed upon people solely because of their identity. So now that we've learned the terminology, I'm going to take you through the highlights of the Cultural Competency Guidelines. The link to the complete 18-page document can be found in the chat. As we mentioned earlier, the guidelines are intended to serve as a reference point during your junior league career. We chose a subset of experiences and populations in the New York City community that we volunteer with on a weekly basis to highlight. So our first one is working with children and teens. When working with children and teens, avoid cultural assumptions. Each culture has a different approach to living. Do not assume that a person you are helping shares your beliefs, and be conscious of your own desire to impose your beliefs upon them. To avoid supporting the gender bias and to encourage the growth of self-esteem in girls, try the following. Praise all children and teens equally for their contributions. Encourage an environment where they are brave enough to offer what might be the wrong answer. Explain that history has proven that great leaders are people who are brave enough to try new things and make mistakes, but are smart enough to learn from those mistakes. Do not let discomfort with skill or subject inhibit the process of a teen or child. The next one is working with senior citizens. When working with senior citizens, be respectful. Give honor and respect to senior citizens. Give some thought of how you would like to be treated in your later years. Use that empathy to tailor your own behavior. Within the NYJL, do not assume that an older staff member or volunteer is preparing for retirement. Asking questions related to retirement can be perceived as disrespectful and off-putting. I think this next one kind of goes with every single group that we're working with, but take your communication cues from the individual. Should you communicate slowly or at a normal pace? Should you use humor? Do stories engage them, or do they tire them out? If you are an extrovert, be aware that you might need to tone down your style. Be a good listener. People feel better if they can say what is on their mind. Working with people living with physical challenges or living with intellectual challenges. Use appropriate language. People with disabilities are people first. They are not defined by their conditions or their diseases. Lack of awareness about disabilities can lead to unintended stereotypes and discrimination. For example, a person is not epileptic, but rather a person who has epilepsy. Putting the person first in our communications is not political correctness. It is showing respect for the dignity of the individual. Also, assist without pity. A direct, friendly, upbeat offer to help is best. Avoid expressing pity that may undermine the person's sense of dignity and respect. And now, working with people facing poverty. Realize that each person is a unique individual with a unique story. The following are some tips to help provide perspective and to assist in achieving cultural competence when working with people facing poverty. First off, we need to recognize that people facing poverty often have to make difficult, stressful decisions regarding critical needs on a daily basis. Do not assume that everyone shares the same assumptions, goals, priorities, or challenges. Go out of your way to be approachable without being overbearing or coming on too strongly. Respect the privacy and personal space of others. Do not ignore the realities of poverty. Employ a no-nonsense no-nonsense, direct approach to partnering with individuals to ease the problems they face. Understand that people have a distrust of social services, education, healthcare, authority, or people of other backgrounds. Build a relationship with patients and work to develop trust. It's very important to develop that trust. Understand that very few people choose to live in poverty. Do not judge people for their circumstances and do not assume to understand why they are facing certain life circumstances. Recognize that not all individuals start with an equitable distribution of resources. Do not perpetuate stereotypes found on television and pop cultures are in personal experiences. Work and lead with an open heart and open mind. Always be willing to listen. Additional guidelines for working with people living in homelessness, experiencing homelessness. Examine your own thoughts. Do not have any unfair assumptions that might prevent you from forming a good working relationship and realizing the potential of those who you are helping. One common myth suggests that homeless people do not work and receive most of their money from public assistance programs. In fact, some homeless people do work and a relatively small percentage receive government assistance. Working with families and individuals in crisis. Understand the cycle of crisis. People typically progress through several cycles of stress during a crisis. First is disbelief and shock, during which an individual may be unable to fully process the information that is presented. Then confusion may be a factor as emotions rapidly cycle. In addition, some people may feel a misplaced sense of guilt. For example, a child might feel that they caused their parents' divorce or caused the situation and they find themselves. As normal routines are disrupted, vulnerability and fear may replace security and safety. Focus and concentration may suffer. For example, typically a good student may experience failing grades, anger and frustration may be expressed. Children may be particularly important developmental stages that may make them susceptible to stress. Working with people with chronic or terminal illness. With chronic or terminal illness, the focus can shift from cure to coping. The shift is significant and takes time. Thought and the acceptance of difficult information. Key daily goals might include developing and retaining a reasonable quality of life, minimizing discomfort, maintaining dignity and self-worth, and developing and protecting relationships with loved ones and other individuals. Recognize that your emotions, even difficult ones, are normal, but do not let your emotions unduly influence your relationship with an individual. Monitor your own grief, discomfort to ensure that any guilt and frustration are not apparent to the patient. You should not make them feel that they have to explain themselves to you or make you feel better. Working with the LGBTQ community. The LGBT community is a diverse and general public. It includes all races, ethnicities, income levels, and educational backgrounds, as well as rural, suburban, urban dwellers. It is important to understand that many LGBTQ individuals and same-sex couples may choose to share very little of their personal lives with their families of origin, professional colleagues, or neighbors due to fear of being stigmatized, rejected, or physically abused. Educate yourself. Learning about their experiences of the LGBTQ people is an important way to understand the issues that are affecting your friends. It is not the responsibility of the LGBTQ people to educate you. So step up to the plate and explore books, blogs, and videos out there. Don't assume. It's impossible to know what a person's gender identity or sexual orientation is by looking at them. So don't make assumptions, but do assume that there could be LGBTQ people in every space you're in. Don't assume that everyone is straight. You know, if you're introducing someone to yourself, you know, offer your pronouns so they feel comfortable offering theirs is also a good suggestion working with people that you might not know.
Mona, that was awesome. I know that we covered quite a lot of information in a short period of time, but as I mentioned, you know, the guidelines are quite comprehensive. So believe it or not, this is actually a high-level overview of what the guidelines offer. We have just a couple of minutes left before the end of this session. So I would like to open the floor to one question, maybe two, or one comment rather, or something that someone wants to put on the table.
Jerry, to add on to that, I would really like to see some of the other participants that are a part of this Zoom to actually weigh in on maybe possibly not even just a question, but an experience that they've actually had that they can relate to that is in the cultural competencies.
So that's a great prompt. And we have time for one. Does someone want to volunteer
Okay,
and
great.
share a perspective? Thank you, Gina. Some brave soul.
Just, hey, Jerry, maybe I'll say this. If we don't get at least one or two, you're gonna have to do an exercise to get your credit.
I don't mind sharing.
All right.
Way to go, Khadijah. Way to go. Love that.
Hi. So hi everyone. I'm Keisha O'Neill. A lot of great information shared. What sits with me right now, this is I appreciate the call out of the assumptions we can easily make when we're dealing with our community partners and the community members who, the homeless, where there's a poverty issue. I think that there's a tendency for us to show up physically at events in a certain way with all of our privileges, because we all have different privileges. So making that very top of mind. I wish there were more people here besides 45 people, because this was a very extremely important event given the work that we do. So I hope this is repeated again at some point. But I appreciate that reminder of what could be easily missed, because sometimes, I'm going to speak to my I statement, sometimes my experience has always been about race or gender, and we easily miss the fact that there are people having different experiences in this city, right, with access. So I'll pause there because I could go on.
Thank you so much for your comment and for the feedback. And I think you're absolutely right. Even just in this short hour, we surfaced, when we were developing the program, Mona, Molly, the DEI work group, the clips were somewhat obvious. And I think this was a comment that someone had made, like you kind of knew where we were going with it. It was a little bit obvious, but I was so surprised in my group, and I'm sure others had the same experience, of what people picked up on that I personally didn't pick up on. And that's super fascinating to really think about the nuance around the fact that we are all walking around from our own very specific point of view and easily miss, just as you said, all the other dimensions of other people's experience. And so the starting point is really getting curious about other people's experience. So I do think a part two is perhaps in order, but we are out of time. We're right at 8 o'clock. And I know that Team VET likes to run a tight ship, which we all very much appreciate. I know that there's a survey in the chat, and we did drop the link to the guidelines. Maybe we can drop the link one more time to the guidelines so people can just click right through and take a look at the complete document. And I want to thank Mona and Molly and Gina and our fantastic facilitators from the DEI board work group and everyone from the VET committee for all of the hard work on this. And thank you all for your participation. And again, for being so willing to engage with us and work with us. This is the first time we were doing this. So it was a little bit of an experiment, and it was a lot of fun. So thank you very much.
Kudos to the
Thank
group.
you, ladies. Awesome job, everyone. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Good night all.
You too.